brought to you by Charity Mobile, the phone company that supports life and family. 5% of your monthly plan price goes to your favorite charity. Buy the way you believe at CharityMobile.com and use promo code TRADITION.
There's a strong rumor that Pope Francis is going to visit the United States again. I don't normally report rumors here, but a bishop has responded to these rumors, a bishop in the United States. And instead of saying, no, Francis isn't visiting, he actually penned a kind of open letter that most of it's not all that interesting for our purposes. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But he penned an open letter to Francis, giving him some suggestions of what he would be doing and how he should address the U.S. bishops when he's here. You have to know by now, if you've been watching channels like this on YouTube for a while or listening to podcasts or things, that Francis has a rather hostile attitude towards the U.S. bishops. And from an American standpoint, the U.S. bishops are pretty moderate as a bunch. You've got a few like Supich out there, but most of the really conservative ones they're not all that conservative in the grand scheme of things. At least that's how they govern their dioceses, because they allow the James Martins of the church to have free run through their dioceses. They allow the desecration of the sacrament by people who are not in a state of grace and cannot possibly be in a state of grace because they identify with their sins in a way that's going to be celebrated in the month of June, if you catch my meaning. They allow these things. Most of them are kind of go-along to get-along types, and while there are certainly some exceptions to that rule, the U.S. bishops are often called extremely conservative in a denigrating, insulting way from Francis. So we'll talk about this today because Bishop Conley is the bishop here, and he has words for Francis that I think you'll find interesting. And the context for this visit to the United States is also interesting. So we get this headline from Catholic World Report. Bishop Conley asks Pope Francis to provide encouragement, clarity, and support to U.S. bishops. Now, the article is about something Bishop Conley wrote on his own diocesan website, which we'll talk about in a moment. But the article sets the stage for why Bishop Conley felt the need to do it. Francis has been slamming American bishops for years, and all of this while there is a rumor circulating from Rome that Francis may make another visit to the United States. It'd be kind of an odd thing to do, wouldn't it, to set the stage for a visit to a country by spending months raking the bishops of that country over the coals. That's what he's been doing. Now, if you remember correctly, Francis visited the U.S. in 2015, and it was like a rock star kind of event. He showed up in Philadelphia, met with tens of thousands of Catholics, he addressed Congress, and did all the things you'd expect a pope to do when visiting America. Rumor is that he might visit again. And I'm not sure that I buy it exactly, because it is a rumor, but the source is very, very strong on it. But there is the possibility, and that's why the bishop wrote what he did, because of the signs of a potential papal visit. So the article gives some important context for this. So we'll start there before we go to the bishop's statement from his website. So from the article, quote, Pope Francis has said in the past that the church in the United States is marked by an environment of closure and a very strong reactionary attitude, which is organized and shapes the way people belong, even emotionally. More recently, when asked about conservative bishops in the United States, the Pope said a conservative is someone who, quote, clings to something and does not want to see beyond that. It is a self-destructive attitude, the Pope said, as reported by 60 Minutes. Because one thing is to take tradition into account, to consider situations from the past, but quite another is to be closed up inside a dogmatic box. Noting that Pope Francis remains very popular among American Catholics, Conley said Pope Francis's statements about the Church in the U.S. have, quote, caused resentment among some faithful Catholics, and that his criticisms of the bishops specifically have perplexed many American bishops, who as a body have a long record of loyalty and generosity to the Holy See. It was reported in April by a French newspaper that Pope Francis is reportedly considering returning to the United States in September, which would be his first visit to the U.S. since 2015, to speak before the United Nations General Assembly. The Vatican has not confirmed the visit. End quote. So there's some important context. Now, we'll turn to the diocesan website run by Bishop Conley, where we get what he actually had to say on the matter. Because he's trying to do a pastoral sort of offering up an olive branch to Francis as a sign of peace, giving him some suggestions on how he could mend relations with the U.S. bishops, and that's actually not a bad thing. Quote, "But as with all modern leaders, Francis is not without critics. His past comments about backward-looking and reactionary attitudes in American Catholic life have caused resentment among some faithful Catholics, and his view of church leadership in the United States, often perceived as negative, has perplexed American bishops, who as a body have a long record of loyalty and generosity to the Holy See. A possible pastoral visit to the United States, recently reported in a French Catholic newspaper, would be welcomed and could be an opportunity for the Holy Father to see the Catholic Church here in a different light. Simply this. Before the Holy Father makes his next visit to the United States, I'd ask him to spend a little time familiarizing himself with the real terrain of American Catholic life, because so much of it is hopeful and good despite the many challenges we face. As one of my brother bishops notes in the recent book True Confessions, Voice of Faith from a Life in the Church, quoting that book, there's a great hunger for beauty among our nation's Catholics. The sacramental imagination is still alive, and if you feed that imagination, people's need for something sacred and true, something beautiful and greater than themselves, and combine it with active outreach and social ministry, the results are impressive. It gives me a lot of hope. When you watch our young parents and children get all excited as they discover Jesus Christ in his church, you realize that the same message was preached 20 centuries ago, and it still has enormous impact despite all of the world's distractions and changes in culture and technology. The Lord continues to do his work, and the work still bears fruit. We just need to be nimbler in addressing the challenges that are coming our way. And we need to be more willing to speak the truth, even when it's not welcome, even when it has a cost." Back to Bishop Conley. "The men in our country who accept an appointment as bishop today are, by and large, men who know full well that they will suffer. They are men who are ready to carry the cross of Christian leadership and have prepared themselves through deep prayer, faithful theological formation, and pastoral experience in the trenches. Their eyes are wide open to the social and cultural toxicity of our times. While the future will not be easy, they were made for these times, and those who are chosen and who accept the call to serve as a bishop are, in my estimation, zealous for the task. They need, and they deserve, encouragement, clarity, and support from the man who holds the office of Peter. Pope Francis can provide all three. We should hope and pray that he will do exactly that." End lengthy quote. Bishop Conley is trying to remind Francis that the bishops in America are bishops like anybody else, and that anybody who, in good faith, accepts the office of bishop knows what it is they're getting into. And now I added the in good faith qualifier because, quite frankly, there are a number of men who accept the office of bishop for essentially political reasons, and it's a really unfortunate thing that has had catastrophic consequences for the church. Men who should be in the episcopate to begin with, maybe they shouldn't even be priests, who view what they do as ordained men not as a service to God and his church to bring souls to Christ, but instead as a personal opportunity for great advancement in life. But aside from them, there are plenty of good men who come to the priesthood and who embrace the offer of becoming a bishop. But there's a darker side to this too. It's been widely reported for a few years now that especially in the era of Francis, there is a great shortage of bishops. Many men in the priesthood are offered the opportunity to become a bishop, and many, many, many of them, the majority of them, turn it down. Now some, we hope, turn it down because they recognize they're not fit to be bishops. Not every priest is, obviously. But some, because of the attitude from Rome, from the things Francis says. They refuse to serve in the episcopate because of the hostility from Rome towards faithful men in the church in America. And that is an unfortunate reality. And I hope that the U.S. bishops have that understanding, without necessarily putting it into writing for the whole world to see. I hope they recognize this situation, that this tension with Rome isn't a one-way street. Francis, just for no reason, insulting the bishops of America. because the bishops in America, despite what I said earlier, are more conservative than those in Rome, for the most part. They frequently try to ignore his dictates as much as possible, and a great example of this is Traditionis Custodes. How many bishops quietly tried to ignore that decree? And others try to read that document in as expansive a way as possible by saying, well, we are going to keep pretty much all of our Latin Mass offerings in our diocese. Maybe we'll trim a couple down, but we're keeping the vast majority in flagrant violation of the document. Quite a few tried. They were all clamped down upon themselves in the aftermath of that document's issuance. This tension with Rome is a two-way street. And some would say it needs to be healed. I would suggest rather that the bishop should hold firm. Treat Francis with respect when he comes. Listen to what he has to say. And behind closed doors, tell him what they really think. And then just keep waiting him out, hoping that the next pope is better. That's my suggestion for them. What's yours? Let me know in the comments what the suggestion is. I will tell you right now, there's zero chance any of these bishops will not recognize Francis as a valid pontiff. There's zero chance of that, at least publicly. Whatever they may harbor in their hearts and in the recesses of their mind is not something any of us are going to know this side of the general judgment. But you can let me know what you want to see them say to him in the comments, please. And like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. So to sharing this on social media, that helps a lot too. And as always, pray for the Church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.